the moment Petra Voss walked through the glass doors of Harlow and Pine Fine Dining. She wasn't thinking about who she was. She was thinking about her mother. Specifically, she was thinking about how her mother had worn the same gray cardigan for 3 years running. The one with the loose button on the left cuff that she kept meaning to sew back on but never did. Petra had just bought her a new one. Cashmere, the kind that folded soft as butter in your hands. And she wanted to take her somewhere worthy of it. Somewhere her mother could sit at a white tablecloth and feel, even for one afternoon, like the world had been good to her. That was the only reason they were here. Petra, 28 years old, a structural engineer who spent her weeks in steel-toed boots and hard hats, had put on a dress for the occasion. Her mother, Odette Voss, 61, retired school librarian, the kind of woman who still said "pardon me" when she sneezed alone in a room, was wearing the cashmere cardigan, soft blue. It suited her. They stood just inside the entrance of Harlow and Pine, one of the most talked-about restaurants in the city. Vaulted ceilings, dark walnut paneling, flowers on every surface that probably cost more than Petra's first paycheck. The lunch service was humming. Low conversation, the careful clink of crystal, the smell of something with truffles and cream. Petra looked around for the host stand. She found it, and behind it stood a man she would later describe as someone who had confused a title with a personality. His name, as she would learn, was Mr. Clifton Bear, floor manager of Harlow and Pine, 15 years in hospitality, medals in his own mind. He was perhaps 50, with silver hair combed to a hard part and a suit that fit him like a statement. He was looking at Petra and her mother the way people look at a word they think they've misspelled. Uncertain, then increasingly sure. He came toward them. Not warmly. "Can I help you find something?" he said. Not "welcome to Harlow and Pine." Not "do you have a reservation?" "Can I help you find something?" The way you'd speak to someone wandering into the wrong building. Petra smiled anyway. "We have a reservation. 2 o'clock, under Voss." Clifton's eyes moved to his tablet. He scrolled again. Something shifted in his expression, not relief at finding the name, but something closer to recalibration. "Voss," he said. "That's right." He looked at her. Then at Odette, who was holding her small purse with both hands and looking at the flower arrangement near the door with genuine pleasure, because she was the kind of person who noticed flowers. "I'm going to need to ask," Clifton said, his voice dropping half a register. "Who made this reservation?" Petra blinked. "I did." "And you're a member of our dining program?" Petra had no idea what that meant. Harlow and Pine didn't have a membership program. She had made a reservation online, the same way anyone did, and she had paid the $200 deposit that was required for tables of 2 on weekends. She had the confirmation email on her phone. "I made a reservation through your website," she said, steady. "I have the confirmation." Clifton's chin lifted slightly. "I see. The thing is, we do hold certain tables for our preferred clientele, and I want to make sure you're aware that our preferred clientele," Petra repeated. The words sat there from the flowers. She was watching now. Very quietly. The way she used to watch the room during school board meetings when things were about to go sideways. She had a talent for stillness that her daughter had never quite inherited. "Yes," Clifton said. "We have an expectation of familiarity with our service standards. Our experience here is quite specific, and I'd hate for there to be any discomfort." He said discomfort, looking at Petra's face. Not at her dress, which was perfectly appropriate. Not at her mother's cardigan, which was, if anything, more expensive than anything he was wearing. At her face. Petra was black. Her mother was. The restaurant, from what she could see, was populated almost entirely by people who were not. She had grown up, knowing this specific feeling, the one that started in your sternum and moved slowly up into your throat. Not quite anger yet, not quite hurt. The thing that comes before both of them, the thing that makes you very, very still. She pulled out her phone. Opened the confirmation email. Turned the screen toward him. "Reservation for 2, she said. 2 o'clock. My name is Petra Voss. Confirmation number 8847LT. Deposit paid. Clifton looked at the screen. Then he did something that she would replay many times afterward. He looked at the screen, and then he looked at her, and he said, "I'm going to have to verify this with our system. Why don't you wait over there?" Over there was a small bench near the coat check, away from the host stand, away from the dining room entrance, away from the sight lines of every other person currently being welcomed and seated. Odette touched her daughter's arm. It was not a warning. It was just a hand. Present. Steady. Petra did not move toward the bench. "I'll wait here," she said. A muscle in Clifton's jaw ticked. He turned to his tablet. He typed something. He waited. The typing had a quality to it. Deliberate, performative, the typing of a man making a point. A young woman appeared from somewhere behind the host stand, early 20s. Dark ponytail, a small silver name tag that read Brie. She looked at Clifton, then at Petra, then back at Clifton, and something in her face changed slightly. Went careful the way faces do when people understand that something is happening and they don't yet know their role in it. "Can you pull up Voss?" Clifton said to her. 2 o'clock. Brie typed. Looked at the screen. "It's here," she said. Confirmed. "Table 7. I see it," Clifton said, his voice unchanged. "I just want to make sure the preference notes are." "There are no preference notes," Brie said, and then seemed to realize she'd said it with more precision than she intended. She looked at the floor briefly. "I mean, it's a standard reservation." Clifton set his tablet down. He turned back to Petra, and he arranged his face into something that was almost an expression of hospitality, but had the texture of a closing argument. "I'm afraid I'll need to reach out to our reservations manager before I can seat you. There may have been a system error on your booking, and I'd hate for you to be seated and then have to move. It could be a few minutes. Perhaps," he gestured again toward the bench, "you'd be more comfortable, Mr. Bear." The voice came from behind Petra. It was calm, not loud. The kind of calm that doesn't need volume because it's not asking for anything. She turned. The woman standing near the entrance was perhaps 65, and she moved through a room the way water moves through stone. Without urgency, without friction, like the room had been arranged around her before she arrived. She wore a charcoal blazer over a cream blouse, her gray-streaked hair pinned back, and she was looking at Clifton Barr with an expression that contained no malice whatsoever, which somehow made it more devastating. Her name was Marguerite Harlow, as in Harlow and Pine. Petra did not know this yet. Marguerite walked to the host stand. She looked at the tablet. She looked at Brie, who gave a very small, nearly imperceptible nod toward Petra. Then Marguerite looked at Clifton. "Is there a problem with this reservation?" she asked. Clifton straightened. "Mrs. Harlow, there was a question about the booking, and I was in the process of verifying." "Verifying what?" "A beat. The deposit is confirmed," Brie said, helpfully, and then went quiet again. Marguerite turned to Petra for the first time. She extended her hand. "I'm Marguerite Harlow," she said. "I own this restaurant. I'm very sorry for the delay. You must be Ms. Voss." The room, or at least the part of it within earshot, went the particular kind of quiet that happens when people are trying to appear as though they aren't listening. Petra shook her hand. "Petra Voss. This is my mother, Odette." Marguerite turned to Odette with the full warmth she had withheld from nothing else, and she said, "Mrs. Voss, welcome. That color is absolutely lovely on you." Odette smiled, the kind of smile she reserved for people she'd decided, in the span of 6 seconds, were worth it. "Thank you, sweetheart." Marguerite turned back to Clifton. What happened then was not loud. It was not a scene. Marguerite Harlow had presumably not become the owner of one of the most successful restaurants in the city by making scenes. What she did was quieter and considerably more permanent. She said, in a voice Petra could hear but that wasn't directed at her, "Come find me before service ends." That was it. 3 words that Clifton Barr clearly understood, because every trace of authority drained from his face like water from a tilted glass, leaving something blotchy and diminished behind. Brie appeared at Petra's elbow. Right this way, Miss Voss. Table 7 turned out to be by the window, the one that looked out over the courtyard garden, where someone had planted jasmine along the old brick wall, and it was just beginning to bloom. White flowers, small and determined, climbing towards something better. Petra thought her mother would like it. She did. They sat. Bree brought water and menus, and a small card explaining the afternoon's tasting. She also brought, without being asked, a small plate of warm Parker House rolls with herb butter, and she set it in the center of the table and said, "These just came out of the oven. On the house." And then she walked away before Petra could respond. Odette picked up a roll. She pulled it open and the steam came out soft and fragrant, and she looked at her daughter across the table. "That woman," she said, meaning Marguerite. "She saw it." "She saw it," Petra agreed. "And that man," Odette said, and that was all she said about Clifton Bear. Because she was a woman who had been a school librarian for 31 years, and she understood that some people were not worth the sentences it would take to describe them. Petra looked at the menu. The words blurred a little, and she let them, just for a moment, before she blinked them back into focus. She had spent her whole career on job sites, where people looked twice before they handed her a blueprint, where men twice her age would address her assistant, a 22-year-old named Trevor, before they'd address her, where she'd had to build herself out of patience the same way she built structures. Load by load. Calculated. Weight distributed carefully so nothing collapsed. She knew how to hold it. She was very good at holding it. But there was something about having brought her mother here. Her mother in the new blue cardigan. Her mother who still said "pardon me" when she sneezed alone. That made it land differently. Made it sit lower. Odette was watching her the way she'd watched her since she was small. That particular reading of her face that mothers do, the one that doesn't need words. "You know what I want you to think about?" Odette said. Petra looked up. "I want you to think about that girl. Bree?" Odette nodded toward the restaurant floor, where Bree was moving between tables, efficient and unhurried. She told the truth when she didn't have to. She could have stayed quiet. Petra thought about it. About that little moment, there are no preference notes, precise and deliberate, and costing her something, probably. "She did," Petra said. "People like that matter more than people think." Odette buttered her roll. "The ones who don't look away. Even when it's easier." The food arrived in courses: a citrus poached shrimp with microgreens, a seared duck breast with cherry reduction, a dessert that involved lavender and honey, and something so small and perfect it seemed almost cruel to eat it. Between each course they talked, the way they hadn't talked in a while, about Petra's apartment and whether it was worth renewing the lease. About the house Odette was thinking of repainting, the shutters, whether sage green was overdone. About a book Odette had been reading that she thought Petra would love if Petra would ever sit still long enough to read anything. It was a good afternoon. It became a very good afternoon. Toward the end of the meal, Marguerite Harlow returned to the table. She didn't intrude. She stopped at the edge of it, the way people do when they're offering presents rather than demanding attention. "I hope everything was to your satisfaction," she said. "It was exceptional," Petra said, and meant it. Marguerite nodded. Then she said, "I want you to happen when you arrived. That's not who we are here, or who I want us to be. I'm sorry it happened to you." Petra looked at her, at the steadiness in her face, the absence of performance in it. She wasn't apologizing for the restaurant's reputation, or for the optics, or for the potential review. She was apologizing to Petra specifically, directly, for a specific thing that had been done. "Thank you," Petra said. "I appreciate that." "As do I," said Odette, and her tone had the weight of a full paragraph. Marguerite smiled, small, private, the kind that meant she understood exactly what Odette meant. And then she excused herself and moved back into the current of her restaurant, and the afternoon folded over her like water. They sat a while longer after the bill came. Petra had expected to feel triumphant. She found, instead, that she felt something more complicated, something older and quieter. A kind of tiredness, yes, but also something else. The particular feeling of having been seen by someone at the right moment, of having your mother beside you when the world does that thing it does, and her already know, and not requiring it to be explained. Outside, the jasmine was still climbing. Odette put on her coat. Petra held it at the shoulders, the way her mother had done for her when she was small, and Odette laughed a little, surprised. "What?" Petra said. "Nothing," her mother said. "Just you." They walked out together into the afternoon light, and Clifton Barr's name did not come up again, and the cardigan was as soft and blue as it had been going in. There are people who measure respect by what someone owns or carries or wears. So they build little gates in their minds, and they stand at them, and they decide. And most of the time, they think this makes them powerful. It doesn't. The gatekeepers of the world rarely understand that the people they're turning away often built the gate, or the road leading to it, or the city it stands in. And even when they don't, even when the person they're turning away is just a daughter taking her mother to lunch, the calculation is still wrong. The math doesn't change. Respect was never supposed to be a reward for proof. That's the part worth remembering.